Ephesians chapter 3, verses 8. Paul is writing here, and he says, "Although I am less than the least of all the Lord's people, this grace was given me to preach to the Gentiles the boundless riches of Christ, and to make plain to everyone the administration of this mystery, which for ages past was kept hidden in God, who created all things. His intent was that now, through the church, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly realms, according to his eternal purpose that he accomplished in Christ Jesus our Lord." Translation: heaven rejoices and celebrates at the glory of the Lord when they look at you, the church. That this plan of God, which was a mystery, how is this ever going to work out? And you are celebrating and worshiping and praising God, and heaven is going, "God, you truly are glorious." Wow. These people are doing this because of what you've done, and that is amazing. And we'll start in the third part. And I just love this. "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, so that men are without excuse." There's going to be no excuse in the end. If we try to give an excuse, he's going to say, "Oh yeah, well, why don't you explain to me how birds fly? How about how grass grows? Why don't you explain that to me?" And there is no excuse. God, it is clearly seen. And we are under assault in an age of information and these little snippets. But we do need to bury ourselves in Christian evidences. And I really want to, prayerfully as a church, we do our job in giving Christian evidences that the tomb of Christ was empty. It's undeniable. It was empty. There's no arguing it. It is more true than the newspaper we read in the morning. And yet we read that and accept that. Well, we used to accept it, but it is true. So we're going to move on to part chapter 3, and this is titled "The Wise and the Foolish Builders." So whether you came and you're maybe looking for work, you're building a business, maybe you're just working with a lot of people in your field, in your area, and whether it's education or you're starting a new business. I'm talking to a brother here just bought a business. All these things and some practical applications in godliness, I think, in Christianity as we endeavor through this world, so that we don't fall into that trap of teaching out there that you've got to be some type of a scoundrel, you've got to put people down, you've got to step on people, that it's not necessary. And yet God will still take care of you and work you through, but we do know from what we just heard, but if bad things do come your way, pray to God for wisdom, that he teaches and leads you so that you gain understanding as you set forward in your endeavors. So the wise and foolish builders. So there's a couple things that contrast in Proverbs. And it's, there's a constant contrast between the wise and the foolish. And it's all through Proverbs and into the New Testament. But, when you think about the wise, here's some of the characteristics of the wise. The wise will consider their path and compare it to God's path. The wise will submit their plans to God. The wise are diligent. They're self-controlled. The wise are thoughtful. They're not rattled by negative consequences. They don't make assumptions. The wise, they listen carefully. The wise, they pay their workers. It astounds me. We have a sister we just hired that's doing some administrative stuff for my wife and I. It astounds me that she's working for somebody that hasn't paid her for 3 months. Either step up and say you can't pay and please go find another job, or you find a way to pay. But you don't take advantage in situations, especially if we know they've got a good heart and want to help. You don't make assumptions. They listen carefully. They pay their work. They don't waste away the day by sleeping. Right? They don't make excuses. They display patience. They have a gracious tone, a kind demeanor, and a loving spirit. That's the wise. The foolish are hot-tempered. They give full vent of their anger. They display no self-control. They're stubborn, prideful, arrogant. They often are quarrelsome. They're slow to listen. They're lazy. They sleep a lot. They're careless, and they make a lot of excuses. They're hasty, overconfident, thoughtless. They don't pay their workers. They're simple-minded. They have the ability to convince themselves of something that is true as not being true. Well, no, it's true. You've been to work late 5 days this week. No, it's not. No, that's the truth. Really have. When something is clear, they can deny it. They disregard moral authority. There's just a general moral authority that exists, no matter what walk of life you come from. But they have a way of disregarding it. They're childish in a negative way, not childlike, childish. Children, they can't see beyond the surface. That's it. They have no idea what's going on. They just want what they want. You're having a bad day. They have no idea you worked all day. They have no idea. They can't see beyond it. They just are childish. But most importantly, it says in Psalm 14:1, the fool says in their heart, there is no God. And it's this foolish behavior that stems from the idea that there is no God. I can act the way I act because, there's no consequences. Whereas the wise says, fear God. They know there's a God. And so they hold their tongue. They don't say what they're thinking. They're patient. They're kind. Because they know God will deal with it. God is very rarely early, but he's never late. The fool says, I can make this in one trip. So a couple weeks ago, it was a Saturday, and, beautiful Saturday. My wife wanted the garage cleaned out. And, just what I want to do on a Saturday is clean the garage. For me, I think it looked just fine. But for her, it was in shambles. And so, as I wrestled with this all week, I thought, I'm going to surprise my wife. I'm going to get up in the morning. I'm going to go to Home Depot, and I'm going to get a truck. And I'm going to get that truck, and I'm going to fill it. And I'm going to take all that stuff over to the storage unit and get it all cleaned out. And so I got up at 5 in the morning, and I went to Home Depot, and I rented me one of those $19.99 an hour trucks, and show up. And as she came out in the morning, and I was ready for her to be blown away, and she sees it, and it's a flatbed truck. And she says, why'd you get that truck? And I'm like, what do you mean, why did I get that truck? I got that truck so we can haul away all this stuff in our garage and put it in storage, because we're going to give it to our kids someday, right? That's always the message. And so I said, no, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. I can load it up and get it over to the storage unit. And I got other things I want to do today, so I want to get this done. So I figured I'd get a truck. Well, 300 yards down the street, after the first couple boxes flew out the back, Christmas ornaments, Christmas angels, lamps, pillows are now all strewn in front of my neighbors' houses. And I'm scrambling this is quickly, I thought I'll take a picture, but I'm scrambling before any of my neighbors come out to see me making this giant mess in front of the yard, and is all over. And I thought, what could possibly have gone wrong? Because I packed the truck so perfectly that clearly nothing is going to come out of this. It's fit just right, and I want to do it all in one trip. So as I'm leaving, and my wife is shaking her head, driving down the road, those first set of boxes come flying out. 20 minutes later, I get to the storage unit, get out, go up to the door, and I forgot the keys for the storage unit. So I got to turn the truck around, drive all the way back home. Meanwhile, my wife now has a Bible talk of women all gathered together that I have to walk through. They're wondering why I'm there, and they ask, And I said something like, stupid keys, stupid locker. And so I went and got the keys, went back, got in the truck, but now I'm okay. It's okay. Driving along, and I pull up at a stoplight, and a car pulls up next to me, and a woman is waving her hand at me. And if you've got a truck full of junk behind you, and somebody's telling you to roll down your window, you just ignore them. You don't roll down the window. So anyway, I roll down the window, and I look back, and my couch had decided to take off in flight at some point along the way. Just then, the bus driver pulls up in the next lane, and he's looking, and he is laughing, and he is pointing at me. He is like, "This is why I get up in the morning." She says, "Your couch is in the middle of the road back there." So I tell her thank you politely, and I roll up my window, and then that little devil pops up and the little angel pops up. The devil's like, "Just keep going, nobody's gonna know." The angel's like, "No, come on, you cannot leave a couch in the middle of the road. You need to go back and get it." So I turn around, I drive back, and sure enough, I come over this hill, dead center of 3-lane traffic highway, on an overpass, right in the middle is my couch. So I make a U-turn, come back, pull. I obviously didn't have time to get a picture. I was just trying to not get killed. I then have to lift this couch by myself as cars are swerving and beeping and honking as they are watching me and laughing. And I lift it by myself, threw my back out for about 2 weeks, got it in the truck. At that point, I didn't care about any stuff. I was just throwing it on top of monitors and whatever else was in there. And I get to the storage unit and I unload it. And I'm convinced if you search for videos online and just put in couch and idiot, there is probably a video that has gone viral somewhere that has me lifting this couch in the middle of this 3-lane highway. And so unload the couch, and as sensitive as our Bible group is, one of the sisters sent me this: "Real men do it in one trip." And I'm like, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. So sisters, I threw this in for you. The fool doesn't listen to his wife. So we're going to talk about the wise and the foolish builder. And so as we begin, Jesus tells us this passage in Matthew chapter 7. He says, at the end of his Sermon on the Mount, he talks about a wise and a foolish builder. And I'm going to throw this out to you just the way I threw it out to our Bible talk. What is the foundation? Christ. Everybody agree with that? It's not. Now, okay, before you accuse me of heresy, we know Jesus is the foundation of the church. But the foundation in our lives, it says, "Therefore everyone," in chapter 7, verses 24, "who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like the wise man who built his house on the rock." And it is putting the words into practice that is the solid foundation for our life. I've had people who have told me Jesus is their Lord and swindle me out of many, many dollar signs. Yes. Not just once. Yes. Just because somebody holds up the name Jesus doesn't mean that he is the foundation of their life. The wise put his words into practice, and when we talk about our life, our house, we're talking about our life. Jesus said, "But wisdom is proved right by her actions." Is that Jesus is proved right in what he's saying by when we obey, when we follow. Jesus said, they were accusing him. They're like, "Jesus, if they were to go out and take a poll," can everybody hear me? I'm trying to increase my volume a little bit. Okay. If they were to go out and take a poll, John chapter 7, who is Jesus? It'd say, some said he's a good man, others said he's demon possessed. So if we go out into the general population to find out if Jesus Christ really is Lord, we wouldn't know. CNN poll would put it at 50-50, right? But Jesus says, but those who obey my word will know where I came from. When we put his word into practice, then we know where he's come from. And so, one thing is certain, that both the wise and the foolish are both going to face adversity at some point in their life. Right? There's no difference between the two. You're going to get hit at some point on every side. It says the rains came down, it said the floods came up, and the winds blew and beat against the house. And you will get hit from every side at one point or another in your life. And we have to be prepared for that time and those times. But it's interesting in Matthew 7, Jesus says, therefore, the wise and foolish builder. Therefore, you've heard it. What's the therefore? The therefore is there because of what he just said in the Sermon on the Mount. The greatest message that has been given to mankind was the Sermon on the Mount. And so, from this, can you see how in times, and I kind of paraphrase this, his teaching, can you see how in times of trouble, being angry, fighting with your wife or your spouse, fighting and quarreling with your coworker or your neighbor can destroy your house and destroy your life? Boy, I didn't intend for it to go there. Boy, I never intended for that to happen. Can you see if we apply what Jesus says to love your enemies, to love those who persecute you? Can you see how you can stand through those tough times? Can you see how you will not end up in court at some point and that you love your enemies? Can you see how hatred, holding a grudge, bigotry, racism will destroy your life and your house? It'll destroy us from the inside. Hatred does more damage to the vessel it's in than the vessel it's projected at. And Jesus tells us to pray. Pray for those. That's what we do. I know when my heart's not right when I can't pray for somebody. And when I do, it's like, oh, okay. But I have to get there, right? It's not always easy. He says, also, back then it was adultery. You've heard it said, don't commit adultery. But now he's saying, don't lust. Don't give into it. Don't let it get into your life. We are working with a couple thousand youth every summer. They come through camp in Pennsylvania, and we work with them. And, pornography is destroying our kids. When I was a kid, if I was tempted, I still had to pull up to the store. I still had to go up and face the cashier. There was some accountability to it. Now there's no accountability. And can you see how pornography will destroy your house? It'll destroy your life. That you cannot see life being demeaned in the way that it is before you start demeaning yourself, before you start seeing yourself as worthless and as nothing. Anytime a young kid is telling me that they're depressed and they want to hurt themselves, I just ask, how's this going? Because they're always connected, often connected. Not saying depression stands alone, but oftentimes they are connected. Can you seeing how going the extra mile can help your house stand? This is a lesson I had to learn. That at work, whatever I was doing, Jesus tells us, go that extra mile. When everybody stops at the first mile. We know the story is that it was by law, a Roman would come into town, and the Jews were required by law to carry the bags a mile through the town or through wherever, and at the end of the mile, drop the bags. I did it. I obeyed. Jesus comes along and says, carry it an extra mile. See, it's in that extra mile where life really changes. Life really begins in the extra mile. If what we're doing is just going the mile, we'll continue to be frustrated by life's results. But life is rewards that, somebody asks you to do something, and I say, sir, I know you asked me to do this, or ma'am, you said to do that, but I thought you also, I know you're working on this, and so I just put this together for you as well, just in case you need it. I know you said that you'd like to, somebody get donuts on Friday for everybody at work, but I got donuts. I also got bagels because, I know some people were, sugar-free, whatever it is. But going the extra mile, and you know what happens when you go the extra mile? Businesses are letting people go, but they're fighting to keep you. They're trying to find a way to keep you. They are. Everybody wants somebody that will go the extra mile. And if it doesn't come back immediately, it will come back. You do something for somebody, it doesn't mean they're going to come back and do it for you. They may be rude, ignorant, and just completely dismissive, but it will come back. That attitude in your life of going the extra mile. Can you see that your house will stand if you go the extra mile? You see how not worrying, being anxious, that your house will stand? Worry, Jesus said, adds nothing. Whatever's going on right now, worrying about a bill or now, see, and I could say this, my oldest son, he's very process-oriented in the way he thinks. And in conversations, saying that gets him angry because it sounds like I'm being irresponsible. Like, don't worry about that bill. It sounds like just don't care about it. No, it doesn't mean I don't care about it. It means that I am not going to treat somebody poorly right now because I have this thing going on over here. I'm not going to ignore the commands of Christ because I've got this challenge over here in my life. And that's what happens. John 13, when Jesus gets up and washes his disciples' feet, he was going to die the next day. He was going to be tortured. And the disciples are eating and drinking and hanging out, and he gets up and he washes their feet. He wasn't like, if you guys only knew what was going to happen to me the next day. You guys, everybody out of here. They didn't even know. They didn't even see it in him, in his character. My kids used to say the airports make me grumpy. It's not airports. It's the tickets, it's the security, it's the baggage, it's the getting up early, it's the connecting flights, it's the late, it's the parking, it's the fees, the fine, all of it is like I walk through the door and they just say I get grumpy. And it's not that. It's everything else that's associated with it. It's not the airport. And I look at my own self and I think, I can't even handle an airport. Could you imagine if I was going to be crucified the next day? How would I treat my family? How would I treat those around me? And yet Jesus gets up from the table and he washes not only his disciples' feet, he washes Judas's feet. And the Bible says that Jesus, the New Translation of the NIV says it says he showed him the full extent of his love. And that was in 84 in that verse. They've changed the translation to a more accurate translation now, which is he now showed them his love to the end, which is amazing. Jesus loved Judas right to the end. He didn't stop. You ever have people in your life you're trying to help, finally you're like, that's it, I'm done. I'm not helping anymore. And they're like, well, I feel like you're not going to be my friend if I don't, if I don't come to church, if I don't read the Bible, or if I don't. No, I love you, but it's hard. Meaning I've got to convey that the message is love from Christ and not just because of what somebody's doing. Jesus showed his love to the end. Can you see how giving to the poor will keep your house standing in hard times? Thinking and being conscious and aware, understanding that there are others in this world that would love to trade places. I used to go back with my brother when we were working on swimways and working on the business, and we'd talk, and we'd hit a bump. We'd hit a tough road, a tough patch. There was one point where the banks wanted to come. They were going to put locks on the door. We had some accounting errors from our previous CFO, and we changed systems, and all of a sudden we exposed that we were actually way in the red. And the banks were threatening to come put locks on the door, and but we had to do certain things to get ourselves back on the right track. And we talked, and I said, but going back to before we were ever in this position, if you were just sitting out there and you were looking for an opportunity, and somebody said, I'm going to give you an opportunity, I'm going to give you this business, I'm going to give you this company. Problem is, it's in the red right now, it's got some challenges. Would you have taken it? He's like, yeah, I'll do it. We just got to look at it that way. You know what? It's a challenge right now. But you know what? It's a challenge I think many would enjoy, many would embrace, many would want, many would, and to see things from that way. But when you give to the poor, it opens our eyes. It helps us to see. And honestly, we're more blessed because of it as a result, isn't it? There's a friend in San Diego. He started a nonprofit called Urban Surf. And I was talking to him, and he takes foster children and just gets them to the beach, and he teaches them to surf, and gets pro surfers to come, and they talk to the kids, and he does amazing things with it. It's just a great thing. And I was talking to him one day, and my son's involved with him, but I said, I need to, we're right there in Mexico. We could drive right into the third world there at Tijuana, where some of the world's greatest crimes that are taking place on humanity. And so as a church, we're really trying to have an impact. And it's not jumping on a plane and flying 12 hours. You take a wrong turn, you're in Mexico. And so I said, I really need, there's an orphanage that we're helping out down there as a church. And I said, I need to get my family down there. I really need to get my family. I want my family to see my kids. And he's a surfer. He's like, dude, it's not what you do, it's who you are. It's like, ouch. It's like, it's like the movie in the scene where the guy's shot and he doesn't know he's been shot, and he's driving home and he's like, oh, what's this blood? It's like, I was going home, I'm like, oh, wow. It is. It needs to be who we are. We put Jesus' words into practice. Can you see how being humble before God, blessed are the poor in spirit, is understanding before God, no matter what we have, no matter if your house is lined with gold, do you understand that we are just poor, blind beggars before the Almighty God? And that our attitude is an attitude of poor in spirit, that if, as a beggar before God, if he just glances my way, I am blessed. If he just looks, if he rolls down his window and just gives me something, I am blessed. Understand, willing to mourn with those who mourn. That was always a challenge for me. I never really handled hospitals very well. I never knew what to say. But then after I've had a few friends pass away, I've had some people suffer from major illnesses, I now realize just saying, hey, being there, just sitting, comfort, anything, but to be willing to mourn with those who mourn. That is a challenge, that we don't shut our door to that. How being meek and gentle and kind, you will inherit the earth. That's a profound one. That's just, man, it's, we tell this story. Alex and I lived in Hong Kong for a while with the business, and Alex was sitting in front with a friend of hers, a Hong Kongese woman who'd grown up in Singapore, and she's there, and this woman comes walking by, and she's like, oh, hi, Mrs. Chu, and she's saying hello. She says, introduces to my wife, and then she says, oh, the woman says, let me get the door for you. And she scurries over, gets the door, and they walk through like, thank you very much, and goes sits down, and my wife asks her, who's that? She said, oh, she owns the building. Meek. I've read many resumes. I've never seen anybody put meek on their resume. And I'm meek. I'm gentle. But the meek will inherit the earth. Hungering and thirsting to know what's right and to do what's right. That we kindle that hunger and thirst to know from God what is right. Yeah, God, please give me wisdom, give me understanding, help me to know, and to understand that being quick to forgive. Not forgiving is a killer, and sometimes it's the only answer. Do you realize every single problem that we have on the face of the earth right now could be cured if everybody just followed Jesus' principles? If everybody just acted like Jesus, that everything that we see would be fixed. Everything. And that forgiveness is just something you got to learn to do and be able to do it quickly and do it well, and learn how to embrace when everything says not to. And that by this, your house will stand. When calamity comes, when hard times come, it won't be torn down, it won't be destroyed. I'm going to finish up with this. I believe it's you guys in this room. Who in here is in the full-time ministry? Okay, get out. No. No. So, no, I'm making my point, and I appreciate Phil's vision, and as a friend of mine, and as we've talked, and his vision is that I really believe the next 20 years of what our fellowship is, of what our church is going to come from people like yourselves. That it's dependent on us getting a vision for what we believe the church will be for the future. And you take somebody like a Nehemiah, who says he was working in the citadel of Susa, and he was the cupbearer to the king, Artaxerxes. Artaxerxes was the most powerful man on the earth. He was king of Persia. It's the largest kingdom. Nehemiah, as a cupbearer, you don't stand next to the king every day by being a slouch. You don't get to that place. And in fact, you've got to be willing to drink the death that could be in the cup for the king. And you stand there, it's kind of like the Secret Service. Because they didn't have rifles. They didn't have, somebody would have to barge through, come all the way in with a sword, and that's impossible. So the only way to really get to the king would be to poison him. So Nehemiah, if that was me, I'd be in the kitchen talking to everybody, making sure everybody's got it. How you feeling about the king today? Everybody good? Everybody happy? Hey, that shipment of grapes, I noticed it came in from somewhere else. Where did that come from? Who grew it? Oh, wait, I'd be out in the fields. How's everybody doing out there? How's everybody okay? Everybody good? Everybody feeling good about the king? All right, good. Let's, and Nehemiah, he's out there. He was working it. He was taking care of everything because he possibly was going to drink death. But his heart, when he heard the condition of the church, he wept and he mourned. And first it says he sat down and he prayed, and it's funny, he confesses his sins and he confesses the sins of the people. He had to get honest. Yeah, I know, Lord. He's right there in the center of Washington, D.C. There's some parties going on, I'm sure, around the king's table. He knows he wasn't exactly who he was supposed to be. It's like, I confess my sins, God, and of the people we've disobeyed. He says, but, and it's interesting, go back to the retribution principle. He says, but God, you said, if we obey, if we get it right, you will bless. And it says, it started in, and I might get it backwards, but his prayer was in the month of Nisan, and it was 4 months later when it was answered, when he's standing in front of the king. Sometimes we just got to pray it and wait on God and know that he hears it. It's his timing. Like I said, he's very rarely early, but he's never late. And that Nehemiah went out, but Nehemiah, he just had a full-time job. He was working full-time, and he went back, and he took all that experience, I believe, of being able to organize and coordinate and work with people and get people to do things. And he was able to then build this wall and honor God and his people with it. And so I had this profound epiphany. That's kind of a redundant statement, isn't it? Can you have a profound epiphany? Epiphany's already a profound. So I had an epiphany. I said to myself, what if everything in the Bible was true? And I know that sounds funny, but I really believe we believe the Bible as truth. But what if everything in the Bible was actually true? And I had to think, so the parable of the talents, where Jesus says, one he gave 5, the other 2, the other he gave 1. What if really someday you're going to be standing there? Jesus is going to be standing right in front of you, looking at you. And he's going to say, what did you do with what I gave you? No, forget all those. What did you do? And I started to think, what can I point to? Because, 4 or 5 times in the book of Nehemiah just stops in prayer and he goes, Lord, remember me. I'm doing this for you. He was facing challenges from outside, persecution from inside. People started to complain. Others were extorting money. And he just stops. He just goes, Lord, I'm doing this for you. And this thing that we're doing, Jesus tells us the parable of the virgin, this is going to be it's a long haul. This is a long journey. This is not, all the music stops, the band dies down, they all go home and they're falling asleep. This is a long journey. And we set goals to do for Jesus, we do for God, but it's got to be for him. If we're doing it for anything else, we're not going to do it. And as he sits in front of me and he says, what did you do? It's very easy to say, and I could see myself. It'd be easy to say, well, I wasn't really sure. You know, I was kind of afraid I wasn't going to do what you wanted. I was afraid I wasn't going to do it right. I was worried that I may not, that may not be what you really wanted me to do. And he's going to say, couldn't you at least, I don't know, helped out in the children's ministry? Couldn't you at least have, and I think, so going back to the very beginning is, after, we got to this place and retirement is, I don't know, do we ever really retire? But to take what God has given me and even building a business right now, I want to do it for Him. I want it to be successful only in that it glorifies God. And that when it comes to money is that we sit down and we actually set goals for giving. Let me ask you something. If you're able to sit down, if you're able to someday write a check to a charity for $1 million, wouldn't you say some other good things are going on in your life? Wouldn't you just kind of think there's going to be some overflow that's going to change around you if you are able to do that? And then set goals for giving. If it's in the business, if it's at work, if it's his family, is that we're doing it to honor and to glorify God. And whatever you set your hand to, that you would say to God, look, Lord, I'm doing this for you. Because I do believe He's going to stand there in front of us one day and go, hey, I gave you life. What'd you do with that? So hang in there through the hard times. God is teaching you. When hard times come, worship Him, praise His name. Know that we don't worship God because He gives us stuff. He's already given us life. Life is blessed when we put His words into practice. Pray for wisdom every day, that the Spirit of God is with you, and may the love of God and the Spirit of Christ be with you always to the very end. Amen. Thank you.